Right. Very good evening, everyone. Welcome to day third of Public Administration Test Series cum Mentorship Program. Uh, okay, my duty continues. So today is day three. Let's jump into the discussion for today straight away. Okay. So question number one. Question number one. Public sector undertakings (PSUs) are essential for strategic sectors but need modernization to remain relevant. Discuss with examples from defense and energy sector. So your focus must be prioritized from this defense and energy sector. Okay, but what is the crux of the question? The crux of the question is where no, it is needed, but it has to modernize. So that's what the simplification of this question is. To remain relevant, it has to modernize. Okay, so let's see this question. How can we have an introduction for this question? Okay. Okay, so introduction for this question. First, you can start the answer by explaining how PSU is the backbone for the Indian economy, which cannot go unnoticed because it has been known that since independence, since 1948, the first IPR, Industrial Policy Resolution, and from the second 5-year plan, remember from IPR 1948 and the second 5-year plan, that industrialization has been the key dynamics of Indian governmental efforts. Industrialization. And how that industrialization was made possible? By the establishment of public sector units. So, public sector units is a backbone for the Indian economy since industrial revolution because it is considered to be the key for industrialization and socio-economic development of the country. So this may be the way that you can start your answer. Continuing. Okay, continuing. Okay, maybe I think I will stop this. Okay, so continuing. Okay, it's also better to add some added references to what you are seeing. The idea of a public sector undertakings can also be correlated to Mahatma Gandhi's trusteeship concept. So this trusteeship concept is an idea propounded by Mahatma Gandhi as a socio-economic theory. His version of socio-economic theory. What is the simple version of this idea is? This trusteeship concept of Mahatma Gandhi, if I want to simplify that, it is this. An individual who owns extraordinary wealth more than what is required, more than what is necessary for their sustenance must contribute to the poor sections of the society, which means whatever a person needs, if a person is having more than the need, it is given by the God. And that excess of wealth and the resources is held in the form of temporary ownership, and it has to ultimately reach the people. It has to ultimately reach the poor section, which means wealthy persons are trustees of wealth. Rich persons are trustees of the money that they own. That is the concept given by the Mahatma Gandhi. Second, and also spearheaded by Nehru's socialist ideological tendencies, that public sector units took a huge turn since independence. Okay, then, but also at the same time, we have to recognize the fact that it needs to be responsive to the changing and challenging times. Why? Because we are not living in 1948 anymore. We are living in 2024. And we can say that it has undergone three major phases: industrialization, or we can say nationalization, industrialization generally, second, liberalization, and then post-liberalization. The three phases that our public sector undertakings have undergone, which means it has to be responsive to the changing and the challenging times. Okay, this could be a way to introduce our answer. Okay, now the question I have asked very precisely: imperative for modernization. Imperative means necessity. Necessity. Okay, so necessity for modernization in defense and energy public sector units. Okay, that's what the question is about. Let's first take up defense sector. Okay, because this is paper 2 question, as I have said earlier, you must integrate both the paper 1 as well as paper 2. Never treat any paper as compartmentalized. No, don't do that. Try to integrate them. Try to bring them together as much as possible. I try to do that as you can see later as the discussion goes, you will see that. So defense sector. Also, I have said use lot of examples in paper 2. Maybe in paper 1, you may not have as many examples to quote. But paper 2, no, you have to use a lot of examples. But the more you use that, you will also become more familiar with those in paper 1 as well. So the best way to start this exercise is to write these examples in paper 2, which will be also becoming a second practice in paper 1 as well. Okay, so remember that. So defense sector. So public sector units such as Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, Bharat Electronics Limited, what are the main role? They have been pivotal in maintaining India's strategic autonomy and security. Okay, so we are reinforcing the need, the necessity of this PSU, right? Remember, but wait. But even though it is important, it is facing several challenges. What are the challenges? The first one, technological obsolescence. Technological obsolescence. For example, from 1986 onwards, India is making an attempt to develop a fighter jet. Okay, to develop a fighter jet. And only in 2019, that too by borrowing an engine from General Electric from USA, we made light combat aircraft Tejas, which is a single engine fighter medium combat aircraft. Tejas MCA, medium combat aircraft. But the point is, by the time it was ready for production in 2019, already the technology became outdated. So the race begins again. So technological obsolescence. For example, you can quote LCA Tejas as an example for this. High production costs and prolonged project timelines. You can also quote example LCA Tejas. It has taken more than 28 years to materialize. You can also quote INS Arihant, India's first aircraft carrier. INS Arihant, India's first aircraft carrier, which was revealed in 2009. It has taken more than 13 years to materialize. So these are the problems that even the best PSUs in our country faces. So it faces several challenges. Okay. Now we are adding more. Strategic necessity, because they are asking about strategic necessity. Strategic necessity. Why? Because we are saying why the modernization is important. Why modernization is imperative? Because increasing complexity of defense technologies. Nowadays, we are facing drone wars, okay, cyber wars. So there is a need to shift the gears. So increasing complexity of defense technologies, and therefore the imperative to keep pace with global advancements. This is what I'm reiterating, the need for the modernization. So it is in this context, okay, what government has done? If the government has done anything good enough for this, let's explore that. Okay, what are the recent government policies? First and the most important is Atmanirbhar Bharat. Let me tell you one thing. When you come to the PSU topic, public sector undertaking topic, the two examples that you can easily quote, okay, you can close your eyes and use that example. One is Make in India and the second is Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme. So this Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme, which helped in upping up the defense productivity of India, government has taken many reforms for that. For example, 74% FDI limit through automatic route. Why? Because to bring in cutting edge technologies through partnerships with global defense companies. Please look at this. Why government want cutting edge technologies? For the modernization. It is for the modernization that government need such an investment. We are doing that. So the next is Defense Acquisition Procedure 2020. Defense Acquisition Procedure. Now what this focus on? Let me add one point. According to this Defense Acquisition Procedure 2020, 50% okay, of indigenous content is mandated. 50% of indigenous content is mandated. So therefore, all this point towards modernization efforts taken by the government in the defense sector. Okay. Now, in energy sector, which the question is asking. Okay. In energy sector, once again, use examples. National Thermal Power Corporation Limited, NTPC, or Indian Oil Corporation, like Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, like that, these two companies, okay, these two PSUs, they play a very important role for energy security. But they need technological upgrades to meet the changing demands. Look at the word, to meet the changing demands. What is a changing demand? For example, we are now living in the times of transition. We are living in the times of quickly changing transition. For example, we are moving from fossil fuel dependent economy, to green and clean economy. So, in this changing time, how this National Thermal Power Corporation Limited, Indian Oil Corporation is going to adapt? How they are going to respond? They have to respond, which is what I'm mentioning here. So, need for a shift. There is a need for a shift. You may ask, why? Remember, when you write answers for 20-mark questions, do not just spray a statement and move away. Because when you say something, please stay there, explain in 2 or 3 words or in a simple bulletin format what you mean there. Okay? Do not say there is a shift for the modernization of the PSUs involved in the energy sector. No, that is not enough. You need to say why the shift. So I have added examples here. Why? 1. Transition towards renewable energy resources. Second, India's global commitments such as Paris Agreement. And to meet these, there is a need for the modernization. So here, is there any examples? Yes, let's see that. For example, the union budget allocations is having a progressive upward trend towards renewable energy. Some major schemes such as National Solar Mission, Ujjwala scheme, it emphasizes India's focus, India's concern for the modernization of India's energy sector. In addition to that, the similar venture is also taken by NTPC, National Thermal Power Corporation Limited, to push for electric vehicles. I'm sorry, NTPC's venture for renewable energy projects. You may wonder, sir, what is this, sir? Let me tell you the very nuanced thing here. Because National Thermal Power Corporation usually is focused on coal power. But now they are focusing on renewable energy. That is what I'm calling it as modernization. That is what I'm using as an example here. The similar is for what is called as e-mobility. Governments push for e-mobility through schemes such as FAME 1 and FAME 2 are some of the examples of government push in this regard. Okay. Now, as much as possible, okay, whenever you write, whether it is paper 1 or paper 2, it is immaterial. Try to bring any references to any thinkers or the theories as much as possible, because that is what makes your answer more reliable and more relevant. Let me tell you one thing. When you take any other humanities, the number of thinkers that you have to master, the number of philosophers that you need to familiarize is usually finite, maybe 6 or 7, but they are so huge and their works are often very confusing. This is the case for other optionals. But with respect to PubAd, you are flexible. There are too many models. There are too many theories. There are too many thinkers. You are flexible to use as many thinkers as possible according to the context. So this flexibility that we have, the public administration optional have, is usually not with other subjects. So, but what is the difficulty here? You need to be exposed. Why I'm saying this? Because only with this exposure, you can bring that into your answers. Remember that. Your answers for paper 1 or paper 2, it doesn't matter. Always bring a reference to any particular thinker or a theory or any concept or any model. Do that. Okay. So here, to what reference that I can bring? Let me include here. Okay. The first one that I can include is public value management theory brought by Mark Moore. Okay. So public value management. So what this public value management stands for? What this public value management stands for? It's a very simple, okay? For example, you take an organization. You take an organization, let it be private or a public. But let's say public sector organization. How do you know or how do you measure the success of an organization? Normally, we measure the success through the profit that they generate, by the revenue that they generate. Or we also can measure by the services or how good they provide the services to the society. We do that, right? But here, in the public value management advocated by Mark Moore, he says something different. According to him, what is the measure of success of an organization? The measure of success of an organization is done in terms of the value added to the society. What is the value that it adds to the society? So, when we consider the public value management of Mark Moore, it is of no doubt that we can say that PSUs, public sector unit, is adding significant value to the Indian society in terms of creating jobs, in terms of creating scientific impetus, so on and so forth. So that's what one theory that we can link with. Next, Max Weber's emphasis on rationalization and efficiency. You know, Max Weber's theory on bureaucracy has many key principles. One set of principles is rationalization and efficiency. But remember, even though we talk about rationalization and an efficiency in bureaucracy, remember, do not think bureaucracy means civil service. No. Any formal organization with a clear structure is using bureaucratic principles. It may be TCS or it may be Reliance. If they are using a clear hierarchy, clear set of rules which are run on neutral regulations, then it can be called as an organization based on bureaucracy. So, any organization with run by clear rules is a bureaucratic format. So, what I am saying here is Max Weber's emphasis on rationalization and efficiency resonates with the ongoing efforts to inject professionalism and cutting edge technology into PSU, right? Government is making all the efforts to make the PSUs more professional. They wanted to adopt them technologies, the recent and the modern technologies. So this is very similar to what Max Weber has advocated. Another one is the strategic divestment policy. The strategic divestment policy. So remember, when we said strategic divestment, so what is the simple understanding of the strategic divestment means? In a very simple way, when a public company or public sector, we say a company or a corporation or an enterprise, let it be anything. When a public company is completely sold off to a private player, means the shift from public to the private. Now that is called a strategic divestment. So government is also aimed at reducing government stake in non-strategic sectors. In non-strategic sectors, now why they are doing this? You may have to ask a question. Why? Two things. One, to mop up revenue, to generate revenue, to address the fiscal deficit of the government, and two, to bring modern technology to the public sector. Because once they sell it to the private player will modernize naturally. So that also will become an attractive point for the new technologies to get integrated. So these are the two things. So what this strategic divestment policy stands for? It says it is an indicative of nuanced approach of leveraging private sector efficiencies while retaining control over strategic domains. Okay, so we have established the importance of security and the energy sectors. Coming to the conclusion. So coming to the conclusion, now it is very clear that we have very clearly established that PSUs are instrumental in economic and strategic terms. Yes, but we also have to record that their modernization is not only desirable but imperative. To add a point, why? Because time is changing. The demands are changing. So their modernization is not only desirable but imperative. So modernization we are doing, but how the modernization has to be? Remember, your conclusion needs to be recommendatory or suggestive. Usually avoid crybaby conclusions. I call it as a crybaby conclusions. Okay, do not be a pessimist, particularly in conclusion. You can present the viewpoints which is of in the negative territory in the body, but avoid it in the conclusion. Okay, so modernization we have to do, but how the modernization has to be? It has to focus on innovation, efficiency, and most importantly, strategic autonomy. But add that, why we are adding more? Because keeping in mind the socio-economic and the political milieu. Okay, so it needs a judicious mix of policy reforms, strategic partnerships like PPPs, and technological innovation. Only through this, PSU can continue to serve as pillars of national strength and vehicles of socio-economic progress. That could be one of the good way to end our answer for this question. Now, let's move to our question number 2. Okay, question number 2. Privatization is not a panacea for the ills plaguing the public sector enterprises. Critically analyze this statement in light of the impact of privatization on the public sector in India. So what the question is, I always say, and I will say it again and again and again, the moment you understand the question well, the moment you understand what the demand of the question is, 50% of your answer is already ready. But we think that we understand the question, but no, it's not. So let me say that. Let me unravel that. So what does this panacea means? Panacea actually means, usually people use many words for that. It's called a silver bullet. You know why they use the word silver bullet? Because normally vampires cannot be killed by anything, only by silver. Okay, so silver can kill even vampires. If any solution can solve an unsolvable problem, they use the word silver bullet. Also, it's also called as cure of all. Panacea also refers to what is called as cure of all. It's something like this. Oru kallula rendu maangan kelvipattirupeenga. But this is called as one stone, 100 mangoes. That's what called as panacea. Okay, panacea for what? For the ills plaguing the public sector enterprises. So there are many problems of the public sector enterprises. For example, lack of modernity. Okay, lack of modernity, poor efficiency, unresponsive to market changes, excessive and intrusive interference of government. We can add on more, but these are called as ill. Now let me tell you whether these problems can be solved by privatization. Please understand, when you have a wound, okay, let's say that you have a wound, a pestering wound in your leg, what can you do? Maybe you will see whether it can be treated. You have to take antibiotics, or you have to do wound cleaning and everything you have to do it. If it still continues, maybe you have to do more treatment, better treatment. If still it continues, maybe you have to cut off only a part of the tissue. If it's still problem, you may have to cut off a little more part. Only then you have to go for cutting of the limb. But if the problem comes with a small wound, you want to cut off the wound. No, will it be right? Remember, privatization is something like a cutting of the limb. But without having a good attempt on how to cure by other methods, how can we straight away go for amputation of our limbs? It's an extreme suggestion. It's an extreme measure, right? So remember, privatization is an extreme measure, like an amputation of a limb. So the question is whether these problems needs amputation. Can we throw the public into the streets? Can we make the public into private? Critically analyze this statement. But remember, the question says not a panacea. Remember, the statement itself says no, it is not the solution. Right? Now, let's understand the question. Let's work on the question. Okay, introduction. Here, also you need to have a choice. What could be the best way to start an introduction? Always take a topic which is most prevalent, which is most crucial to the question. Here, privatization is a crucial point. So, you can start with the privatization. Okay, for every question it will change. Do not do blindly what comes in the first word. Okay, the first word of the question is the first definition. No, don't do that. You read the question, based on the importance you prioritize. So privatization. So privatization, which is a part of LPG reforms of 1991. Okay, it's a central feature of global economic reforms since the late 20th century. Of course, we have no denial of that. So what this represents, what this privatization represents, privatization means a paradigm shift. It's a paradigm shift from state dominance to market-led governance. Remember, that is the paradigm shift we are talking about. So when we say privatization, moving from where to where? It's a moving from state dominance to the to the market-led governance in the public sector. So why this privatization is often said? You may wonder why. Because this public sector is having too many problems which cannot be solved. So what they say, hey, you guys, you go away. It's like a throwing an unruly, an undisciplined son out of the home, right? A father will do it, right? If a son is very unruly, doesn't follow orders, throw him out. Like that, if a PSU is not responding, is not doing good things, throwing them out. This is privatization. So what this means, it is often considered a solution. Privatization, remember, is considered as a solution for what? To enhance efficiency and productivity in the public sector enterprises. Okay, so there are many examples for this privatization in the recent times. A good example that you can use is privatization of Air India in 2021, privatization of Bharat Aluminium Company, Balco, and also privatization of Indian Petrochemicals Limited, bought by Reliance Company. And in the Madhuri Pathingina, Niti Aayog has prepared 26 PSCs. 26 public sector enterprises have been identified by Niti Aayog for privatization. And these were some that has been privatized. So, privatization is of active consideration by the government. Why? To enhance efficiency and productivity in the public sector enterprises. Okay, let's move on. That's the introduction. We have given introduction about privatization, when it started, what privatization is doing, some examples in the Indian context. Okay. Now, as I said earlier, always bring some theory into your answers. So what is the theoretical underpinnings? And constitutional framework. Why constitutional framework? This is paper 2. So as much as possible, bring any legal or constitutional provisions in your answers. So what is the rationale? So this rationale for privatization can be seen from two perspectives. First, from public choice theory. Can you remember? I have explained about this public choice theory in yesterday's orientation. So public choice theory simply is the injection of economic principles. Which economic principle? Two major things. Principle of choices, principle of self-interest into the public affairs. Okay. So this is what called as politics without romance. The public choice theory calls it as politics without romance. So injection. So this is what public choice theory is. How can we connect a public choice theory with the privatization? So public choice theory, what it says? It says once a public sector has been privatized, what it does? it inherently, private ownership, it inherently incentivizes efficiency, isn't it? Because no public sector will go bankrupt. They don't want to go bankrupt. So it inherently incentivizes efficiency, cost reduction, and innovation. But why it did not happen earlier? Earlier it did not happen because bureaucracy often ends up in monopolistic practices, and therefore it is considered to be not efficient. But private sector is efficient because there is no monopoly there in the private sector. So that is the first linkage we can bring. How can we connect the privatization to a theory? One theory you can connect is PCT, public choice theory. The next, how can we connect it to the constitution, Indian constitution? Okay, with a special emphasis on social justice, public sector, privatization can be linked to the emphasis of social justice in the Indian constitution through the articles 38 and 39 in DPSP. So article 38 of DPSP, okay, which expects about the promotion of social welfare. Article 38, promotion of social welfare by the state. And article 39b, okay, article 39b, it talks about ownership and control. Ownership and control of material resources. Ownership and control of material resources of the community is to be distributed. It should not be concentrated. Article 39 says the ownership and control of material resources of the community has to be distributed to serve the common good. To serve the common good. So here, when we say privatization, it is not very favorable to what the article 38 and 39 talks about, right? Because it is not distribution of the wealth, it is in fact concentration of wealth in the private hands. So these are the two things that we can connect to. One which favors the privatization, the one which does not favor the privatization. Okay, now next question, next part of the answer, impact on efficiency and performance. What are we talking about? Please do not ever forget on what line that we are thinking. So we are talking about privatization. So what is the impact of privatization on efficiency and performance? This is the next discussion. So we can say that from Indian context, okay, privatization is a mixed bag. It is not always successful, neither it is completely a failure. It is a mixed bag. So privatization, இதுதான் என்ன அர்த்தம் புரிஞ்சுக்கங்க. இந்த வார்த்தை என்ன சொல்லுதுன்னா, it is not a panacea. It means that just because a PSU has been privatized doesn't mean that there is a turnaround of it. But we have some good examples for that. If you take, for example, Maruti Suzuki, you wouldn't believe it. Maruti Suzuki was actually established in 1988 as a PSU. But later, government sold off its stakes, and with acquiring of with it becoming into a private company. Now it is not a government holdings anymore. But see the success of the Maruti Suzuki after privatization. It was originally in 1988. It was originally a government enterprise, but after its privatization, it has become one of the leaders in the market. So this is a success story. But this success story is not uniform. Okay, it is not uniform. It is not very predictable. But at the same time, there are also some challenges. There are also some problems. What are the problems? So it is success apart only. Yeah. What are the problems? Let's say privatization or a problem. What are the problems? The first problem is job losses. It creates social insecurity, generally saying social insecurity, which results in job losses, and also it compromises on social objectives. Remember Article 38 and 39, such as providing universal access to basic services. Okay. Okay. So even recently, the privatization of Air India, which actually was successful, India successfully privatized. You know to whom it sold? It sold to Tata. Tata group of companies has bought it in 2021. So, taking example from this selling of Air India to Tata, it highlights the government's approach. What are we understanding as a government approach? We understand that privatization எதுக்கு செய்யறாங்க அப்படின்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா to reduce fiscal burden. One, I already mentioned that, to reduce fiscal burden, and second, enhancing efficiency. But it also raises concerns regarding employee welfare and market monopolies. So, you want to solve a solution by one method. The method may solve that problem, but it will in turn create a new set of problems. So, this is usually what public administration is going through. It's not like anything is a perfect solution. This is why Mill's principle called as no harm principle. This is actually the principle used in medicine while giving a treatment to a patient. For example, you take a very powerful antibiotic. If it's a powerful antibiotic, it will have side effects. But the antibiotic will help the person from death, certain death. So you're looking at the two harm. One, it has side effects. Second, death. Which is more preferable? Preventing death is preferable. So go ahead. So likewise, we are going ahead with the least problematic choices. The least problematic choices going for privatization. So that's what government is doing to reduce fiscal burden and enhancing efficiency. But it also creates simultaneously other set of problems: employee welfare, job losses, market monopolies, inaccessibility, lack of access to services, etc. Okay, now socio-economic considerations. Okay, socio-economic considerations. So that was one perspective. Now, what from social economic consideration, what it means? It means the privatization in India is not always aligned with the broader developmental goals. What I'm saying here, remember, privatization has to be seen as a short-term measure. It has to be seen as a short-term measure, which means the broader developmental goals of longer duration, of longer term, is completely forgotten. Okay, how can we say that? For example, privatization affects the vulnerable sections of the society. It affects the vulnerable sections of the society, which may contravene the sustainable development goals and the Niti Aayog's strategy for New India at 75. In addition, for example, privatization in sectors like banking or insurance, what it affects? It affects accessibility of affordable financial services. Accessibility of affordable financial services. So these are the things that are affected due to the privatization. So the next, political and governance dimensions. Political and governance dimensions. Remember, privatization from political perspective is a very contentious issue. It is a very sensitive and a contentious issue. So, to give an example for that, government before 2 years has brought a proposal for the privatization of the railways, but it faced a stiff protest from the opposition and other civil society organizations. So, the point here is it is a politically sensitive issue. the recent opposition to the privatization of the railways and the defense sectors. What this suggests? It suggests that there are deep fears considering national security and the strategic interests of the state. What are the next thing? Governance challenges also persist. Okay, not only political but also governance challenges. What are the governance challenges? Let's remember, you privatize a company, but once it is privatized, how can we know that it is functioning in a transparent manner? Let's say a defense company is privatized. Let's say Bharat Electronics Limited is privatized. And the new owner of this company, how can we ensure that the transparency and accountability of this very sensitive company is maintained? So, even there are governance challenges such as issues of transparency and accountability in the divestment processes. It is here John Rawls, okay, very famous for his theory of justice, says that equity is vital in governance. John Rawls observes that equity is vital in governance. So why I'm including John Rawls' idea here? Because poorly managed privatization. What is the consequence of this? If a privatization is poorly managed, it means it prioritizes profit over public welfare. So, if a privatization is undertaken by the government in a knee-jerk manner, what it shows? It shows that the government prefers profit than public welfare. John Rawls says, no, it is not. It has to be ensure that equity is vital in the governance. So that's the reason I've included the concept of equity, importance of equity from John Rawls. Okay. Now, as we have explained about the importance or discussion about the privatization, some ground privatization does good, but on some ground it is not good. So I'm critically analyzing. Remember, whenever a question asks critically analyze, you have to present both the perspectives. You have to become a neutral judge who will hear both the sides of the argument. So you have to do that. So privatization, what it does, it can enhance efficiency and can bring technological advancements, but calling it as panacea for all the problems is overly simplistic and also very misleading. So it is here, Woodrow Wilson records that what he says, the government must evolve. So government must evolve means adapt. Evolve also means adapt. Government must adapt with the changing economic and social conditions, but government must evolve. Government keep on changing. But even in a changing government, one should not change. What is that? Public welfare. So government should never lose sight of the public welfare. No matter what they change, the public welfare should not be lost sight of. So that is what said by Woodrow Wilson. So what can we do? What is the path forward? It means not just embracing privatization. It's not only that, but also strengthening. Once we privatize, we need to ensure that strengthening regulatory frameworks so that privatization contributes to a more equitable, just, and sustainable development trajectory. Let's move on to the question number 3, third question. Max Weber's concept of bureaucracy. Max Weber's concept of bureaucracy. Okay. Has been central to the functioning of PSUs. Yes, we know that, but it says critically examine. Once again, whenever the word critically comes, you have to do the analysis on both the perspectives, the good and the bad perspectives. So examine the advantages and limitations of bureaucratic management in the context of Indian PSUs. I have already told you PSUs usually follow bureaucratic style. They usually adopt and follow bureaucratic style of functioning. So this style of functioning, what are the advantages and limitations? This is what the question is simply asking you. Okay. Let's see, introduction. What can we say? Because the question is talking about Max Weber's concept, it's better to begin with Max Weber. So Max Weber's bureaucratic model, what it emphasizes? It emphasizes structured hierarchy, because only through structured hierarchy there will be an establishment of chain of command. Hierarchy illana chain of command kadayadu. So chain of command, impersonality. Okay, impersonality and rule-based operations, rule-based behavior. Okay. Now, this idea of Max Weber's bureaucracy is foundational to the functioning of PSUs. Remember, you have to make it very clear that for the functioning of PSUs, Max Weber's bureaucratic model is foundational, is basic. So, it is in this context we need to know that this bureaucracy model is very much required. எப்போ required நீங்க சொல்லலாம்? ஒரு தெரு கடையில ஒருத்தர், let's say a person who is having a roadside shop, whether he needs bureaucracy, or let's say that a company which has 100 employees with 3 branches, which needs bureaucracy. So as an organization grows bigger and bigger and bigger, there is a mandatory and an obligatory requirement for the integration of Max Weber's bureaucratic ideas. So remember that PSU are always larger. So we are saying it is highly relevant to meet needs. It's highly relevant. The model edukuna highly relevant to meet the needs for organizational efficiency, second, predictability, and that's how it influenced public sector units. That's the introduction. Okay. Now, as the question I have asked, this emphasis on rule behavior, this emphasis on impersonality, this emphasis on chain of command, hierarchy, limitations and advantages, what are they? Let's first discuss advantages. The first one is structured organization and predictability. Because if an organization is based on bureaucratic idea, it will be structured organization and predictability. Why? Because it follows hierarchy. So it will be structured. Okay, next. A good example of that is how Indian Railways and SBI operates. The way Indian Railways and SBI operates is very structured because it is bureaucratic. Second, but why? Because bureaucracy helps in managing large organizations. Bureaucracy helps in managing large organizations. Second advantage, rule-based decision making. The second is rule-based decision making, not arbitrary decision making. Okay. So, why? Because bureaucracy means adherence to rules and procedures, and therefore there is a very high level of transparency. Even though I say transparency, I have to be honest, transparency is very little. Accountability, yes, which is also very diluted, but still when you compare transparency and accountability, this has a higher prevalence than this. Okay, but still let me continue. Next, in addition, this rule-based decision making, who brings it? Bureaucracy brings it. So the bureaucratic idea brings rule-based decision making. This aligns with constitutional principles of equality and justice, so that the decisions are made impartially. The next advantage, professionalism and specialization. Bureaucracy means professionalism. Bureaucracy means specialization. So it promotes specialization, leading to increased efficiency and professionalism. Okay. Then, what are the limitations? Now, what are the limitations? Let's discuss the limitations. The first limitation is, as you make hierarchy stronger and stronger, what will happen? As you make rule-bounded behavior more and more stricter, what will happen? Remember, other than limitations. First one, everything is bound to rules, everything is bound to laws, then it means you become inflexible. You don't respond to the changing context, changing conditions. So the first problem is inflexibility and resistance to change, which means one of the biggest criticism against bureaucracy is its inherent rigidity. Remember, rigidity is one of the characteristics of bureaucracy. Why? Because they stuck to rules, they stuck to hierarchies, they are very much into the chain of command, so they are very inflexible. So that is one of the limitation. For example, take for example how much the modernization the private sector banks have taken in India, which was only later followed by SBI. Why? Because SBI follows bureaucratic principles, whereas private sector adopted modern management methods. So therefore, private banks are quicker to respond to changes, which is later only followed by SBI. Next problem, innovation stifling. Okay, innovation stifling. So what this innovation stifling means? Bureaucracy suppresses creativity and innovation. Bureaucracy suppresses innovation. Why? The simple reason is bureaucracy has many characters. In fact, you talk about bureaucracy, everywhere one kind of a character comes. One personality of bureaucracy is they are status quos. Means maintaining the present state. They are very much averted aversion. They are very much averted to change. So they resist change. So the problem is creativity in change. But bureaucracy, by its very nature, organization or the nature that it is, it suppresses creativity and innovation. For example, one example, how much it suppresses innovation and creativity. Take for example BSNL, a public sector unit. Here, despite the support that it receives from the government, it has lagged so behind in the adoption and the rolling out of 4G and now 5G technologies. And the third limitation is corruption and red tape, because everything is rule bounded. And therefore, when it is rule bounded, two things happen. One, it goes slow because everything it has to go with the permission. Third problem, second thing, okay, everything goes slow. And then how to make it faster? Two ways. One, the person has to be naturally motivated. Otherwise, you motivate. How? Give corrupt, bribe them. So, red tape, corruption, one. It is like a two rails. Okay, and the public sector is a train. So corruption, red tape go together. They go hand in hand together. So despite the aim to promote impartiality, bureaucracy is sometimes synonymous with inefficiency, red tapeism, and also corruption. These are the limitations. Now, context and the reforms. I'm saying some important context in this context, in this area. So the strategic divestment in Air India. Okay, what this signifies? It signifies towards reducing bureaucratic burdens and enhancing competitiveness, isn't it? Privatization of Air India. What is the aim? Reducing bureaucratic burden and enhancing competitiveness. Okay. Second, other schemes like Digital India or like Make in India, it also aims to make the administration more flexible and also in its adoption of cutting edge technologies. Okay, coming to the conclusion. What was the question? You remember the question? Now coming to the thing. So Max Weber oda idea veno, but it has its own advantages and disadvantages, right? We have seen the both. Coming to the conclusion. So Max Weber's bureaucratic model, what it does, what it has contributed. First thing it contributed, it created a strong organizational framework, a strong organizational structure for our PSUs. It is this organizational structure ensured stability and procedural correctness, right? but you make something very strong. For example, you know that homes in Japan can sway. The tall rise buildings in Japan, when they construct, they make the building in such a way that they sway when the earthquake is hitting that ground. Why they do it? Because you need to be flexible when your ground shakes. But when the same thing happens in India, everything is concrete, everything is laid with all the iron bars, it's so rigid. The moment it shakes and do it, all the building will collapse. So flexibility is something very essential when there is a rapid changes happening in the ground. Here, bureaucracy is for stability. Bureaucracy is for continuity. Bureaucracy is for predictability. But bureaucracy can never be suitable for adaptation. For change orientation, it is usually not suitable because அந்த structure அதுக்கு ஒத்து வராது. அதுதான் இங்க சொல்றோம். So, but it poses challenges in a rapidly changing economic environment. Okay, what is the future? So, coming to the conclusion, what is the future? The future in reforming the model while maintaining its strength, but also mitigating its rigidity, means reducing its rigidity. Okay, good. But how can we do that? We have to do that by integrating new models such as CSR, corporate social responsibility, or PPP models, or MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding. So these are some innovative methods we can integrate into the functions of the PSU so that it is flexible while also maintain its structure. Coming to the question number 4. Okay, question number 4. Statutory corporations. Okay, statutory corporations, despite their autonomy, I hope you know statutory usually means law-based. Okay, often face challenges unique to the structure. Discuss the validity of this statement with examples. What is the question? Let me read it once again. Statutory corporations, despite their autonomy, face challenges unique to the structure. Okay, let's analyze this first with introduction. Okay, what can we say this with introduction? Remember, okay. See, statutory corporations na enna appadina. See, in India, there are different categories. You remember yesterday I talked about this in the orientation. So there are different forms of PSUs in India. Okay, government companies, okay, government departments, statutory corporations, etc. Here, what does the statutory corporation means? It is a company created through a legislative action. For example, BSNL. BSNL is a statutory corporation. SBI. It is a statutory corporation. So, statutory corporations are created through legislative actions. But what is the uniqueness about this? So, what is the uniqueness about this is, first thing, what are the uniqueness? Let me say the uniqueness first. They are commercially oriented. They are like any other company working for the profit. They are commercially oriented on behalf of government. Okay, for example, you get a loan from SBI and you don't pay it. So SBI will say, no problem, I'm a government company, I will bear it. No, they will send the agents to collect money by whatever way means possible. So they are commercially oriented, first thing. And the second thing, you know, they enjoy significant autonomy. Autonomy means independence. So this is a two thing. So remember, What I'm saying here is we have public sector. Public sector is almost under the complete control of government. Now, we have the private sector. It is autonomous, completely autonomous. Here we have a line. On the one hand, we have public sector. On the other hand, we have private sector. You know what statutory corporations are? They somehow come in the middle. They are public, but they are also like a private company. Right? So remember that, because this is the uniqueness of statutory corporations. So the statutory corporation, that is what I have explained here. So statutory corporation, it occupies a distinctive position in the public administration landscape. What is the distinction? It's straddling the lines between government oversight and corporate efficiency. Corporate efficiency and government oversight, they somehow come in the middle between the both. Okay. So this statutory corporations, they have a degree of operational freedom which is not present in any other traditional government department. They are very much free. Why? Because to enhance service delivery, better service delivery, while adhering to the public welfare goals. Okay. Now, we are asking what are the challenges? Because remember, what is the question? Read the question once again. Don't forget the question. What was the question? The question is this. Statutory corporations, despite their autonomy, I have told you what is that autonomy. Despite their autonomy, often face challenges. Why the challenge? Unique to the structure. What is the structure? Based on law. But they are somehow neither public nor private. இதுதான் அவங்களோட structure. இதனால என்ன பிரச்சனை? What are the challenges? Okay, let's understand it now. What is the first one? The first one is, when we say autonomy, one thing is, the first problem is financial oversight and budgetary constraints. Financial oversight and budgetary constraints. Now, how this is a challenge? Let me explain it. For example, when you take BSNL, recently, I'm talking about recently means in the last third and the second year, there was an injection of about 70,000 crores as a revival package. BSNL received 70,000 crore revival package. Even then, it cannot attain profitability. Why? As I said earlier, this is one of the challenges of financial autonomy. It means finding the balance between financial independence along with periodic government bailout. Finding a balance between them is a difficult task for these companies. Second, political influence and policy shift. Even though statutory corporations are fairly independent, they're fairly autonomous, they still come under the domain of the government control. Let me give you one simple example for that. Under Foreign Contribution Regulation Act 2010, okay, any NGO, when it is receiving foreign funding, their account shall be in a designated SBI branch. Why SBI? Because it is a government controlled bank. For example, you want to buy electoral bonds, okay, to donate to a political party. Where can you buy? And where the political party will encash the bond? SBI, designated branches. So, government control irukku. They are also autonomous, but they also come under the governmental oversight. So that is the problem. Political influence and policy shifts. So an example we can take, the strategic divestment of Air India. The third, regulatory and compliance challenges. So SBI, though operationally autonomous, remember, I'm talking about regulatory and compliance challenges. See, whenever the whole question is discussed, always remember the concept of autonomy, which means this: statutory corporations are autonomous. to a large degree. Remember, they are not completely autonomous, because if they become completely autonomous, they are private. They are not private, they are public, which means, but still they enjoy more autonomous. Anna, what are the problems we are discussing? So they are autonomous, but regulatory and compliance challenges. SBI, even though it is operationally autonomous, it faces significant regulatory scrutiny from RBI. What are the other challenges? Ethics and transparency. For example, Coal India Limited, which faced one of the massive scandals of the time, coal scam. Okay, coal scam. So, according to CAG reports, so public sector units, we believe that once it is autonomous, they will adopt private practices, which will result in the bailing out of corrupt practices. That's what we believe. No, that was not the case. Even with the autonomy, they struggle with the transparency and ethical governance. So autonomy, அப்படினா நாம சில ஐடியாவை வச்சிருக்கோம். We have some ideas, but remember, we think autonomy will bring more transparency in these companies. We think it will bring more openness, less corruption, but it's not true. It will still be corrupted. So it means there is a need for robust internal controls and transparent reporting mechanisms. The next problem, the next challenge is adaptation to market dynamics. Adaptation to market dynamics. What is this? Take, for example, Indian Railways. I hope you are aware, Indian Railways is in the news for all the wrong reasons. Because there has been, in the spate of 2 years, there has been 3 accidents at a large scale. So, Indian Railways, adaptation to market dynamics. In fact, that is one coach. Okay, I don't remember the abbreviation of that. It's been long back. It's called as LHB coaches. Okay, LHB coaches. See, எந்த அளவுக்கு நம்ம முட்டாள்தனம் பண்றோம்னு ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிள் சொல்றேன் பாருங்க. This LHB coaches that India has it has been used in wide range of railway zones. இதோட uniqueness என்ன அப்படின்னா, this LHB coaches can travel up to 160 km per hour. Means it is suitable for high speed coaches. But என்ன தெரியுமா பண்ணிட்டோம்? High speed coaches வாங்கிட்டோம். Remember, Vande Bharat, you know, Vande Bharat, Shatabdi, they all use LHB coaches. Okay, good. So we bought that LHB coaches, but train எங்கப்பா போகும்? ரோட்லயா போகும்? It needs well maintained railways. Second, signaling system. இத பண்ணாதான் இந்த கோச்சி ஒழுங்கா ஓடும். இவங்க என்ன தெரியுமா பண்ணிருக்காங்க? டுடே railway board has decided to decrease the speed of the Vande Bharat from 160 kilometers to 130 kilometers. They think because accident will happen. Because accidents are happening, they are reducing speed. But let me tell you one simple fact here. The recent accident in West Bengal, you know, the goods train which collided with an express, it was traveling only at a speed of 45 kilometers per hour. Remember, even the 45 kilometers per hour created that much of an accident. 130, 160 is not going to make much of a difference. But still we have taken a decision. இதுதான் நம்மளுடைய response to market dynamics. So we are very poor in responding to this. So the Indian Railways recent initiatives, but remember the example I told you. So statutory corporations, they don't fairly respond well to the market dynamics. Now, is there any recent reforms in this context? Yes, some recent reforms. This, I'm saying the government, what it has done. One example is governance reforms in public sector banks. With the growth of non-performing public assets and the fleeing of potential defaulters, the government is very keen to reduce this. So the changes it has brought is separation of a role of a chairman and managing director. So remember, there's a huge list of initiatives brought by the government. Second, modernization of railways. One example is the creation of Indian Railways Station Development Corporation. For what? As a special purpose vehicle to manage station redevelopment. இதுல பண்ணிருக்காங்க, மத்த இடத்துல பண்ணல. Okay, good. Digital initiatives for transparency. For example, e-tendering, e-auctions, digital attendance have been implemented by the government to better their functioning. Coming to the conclusion. So what are we saying here? Statutory corporations are designed to function with operational autonomy. Yes, but they are tethered. They are still held. Tethered means held. They are still held by governmental oversight. Therefore, they face myriad of challenges. So these challenges, exemplified by financial constraint, political interference, and regulatory burdens, it necessitates, it needs an evolving management approach that includes strategic divestment, regulatory reforms, and enhanced transparency. Let's move on to the question number 5. The last question. Analyze the reasons. Analyze the reasons. One moment. Okay. So analyze the reasons for the predominance of government companies over other forms of PSU in India. I told you already, PSUs in India are many types, many forms. But why there is a predominance of government companies? Remember, when I say departmental undertakings, it is under a ministry. If it's a statutory corporation, it is by a dedicated law. If it is a government company, it means they are established under Companies Act. So these are the 3 broader categories. இந்த மூணுத்தையும் பார்க்கும்போது companies, government companies are more in number. In India, PSC எடுத்து பார்த்தோம்னா government companies are more in number. The question, why? What is the reason for that? Okay, let's analyze this. Introduction. As I have said earlier, India is well known for diverse landscape of PSUs. It is known for diverse landscape of PSUs, which means statutory corporation, government companies, departmental enterprises. So diverse landscape. And among the diverse landscape, government companies have a predominance. Why? Why this is? This is not only for a matter of administrative preference. This is not only for administrative preference, but deeply rooted in the socio-economic and political fabric of the nation. What is that? We are going to discuss. First one. What are the reasons? First one, flexibility in operations. Flexibility in operations. Why? The first reason is government companies. We are talking about government companies. Government companies are incorporated under Companies Act 2013. It is, for example, even Reliance. They are also incorporated under Companies Act. So, literally, government companies is literally like a private sector. Literally a private sector. So, government companies are incorporated under the Companies Act. So, what is the benefit? Therefore, it enjoys greater operational flexibility compared to statutory corporations or departmental undertaking. These guys are very flexible. Second, அப்போ flexible ஆனா என்னென்ன advantage நீங்களே புரிஞ்சுக்கங்க. They are quicker decision making, more adaptive strategies, they are more competitive, etc. Second, financial autonomy. They also have a financial autonomy. Second, they also have a better governance and accountability. Why? No, this is very important. Why? Government companies are known to have a better governance and accountability. Very simple, because under Companies Act, under Companies Act 2013, there are stringent requirements for how a company is to be run, how they file the audit, how the board of directors are operating, how the stakeholders' interests are maintained. There are a slew of measures to ensure that the stakeholders and the shareholders are well informed, okay, are well knowledge. So, for example, let's say governmental corporation. statutory corporation. They don't have to do all that. But because private sector also comes under Companies Act, it results in higher levels of governance and accountability. So government companies are subject to stringent governance norms and financial audits, which is very similar to the private sector counterparts. The next fourth reason, socio-political considerations. What are the socio-political considerations? One, these government companies is also responsible for making jobs, regional development, and also sectoral balance. Fifth one, legal and structural advantages. Why the government companies are more preferable? Because it has a limited liabilities, not like a government company. So not like a statutory corporation. It is having a limited liability. What is this limited liability? Simply means it means a company which is maintaining its own affairs. Permanence and also an independent corporate entity status. It is a public sector, but it is like a corporate entity, like a public, like a private sector. So an independent corporate entity status. So these all gives a very unique legal and structural advantages to the government companies. So coming to the conclusion, these are the reasons. Coming to the conclusion. So the predominance of government companies, why? It is a multifaceted phenomenon. Why? Because of the structural flexibility, financial autonomy, and also enhanced governance frameworks. But remember, the most important point I would like to make is here. As India continues to integrate its economy with the global markets, remember, there is post-LPG movements that is going to integrate the world economies further, mainly fueled by digital technologies. So the integration of India with the rest of the world is going to become more deeper. In this context, in the மாதிரி சூழ்நிலையில public sector எப்படி இருக்கணும்? Remember, India is going to get integrated more with the world. With India now becoming the most populous nation, what needs to be done? In public sector enterprises, எந்த ஃபார்ம்ல இருக்கலாம்? Can it be departmental undertakings? Can it be statutory corporations, or would it be government companies? The most ideal is government companies. So the role of government companies is likely to grow. This is one of the important points you should mention in the conclusion. So this alignment of corporate efficiency with public goals. It's a corporate efficiency, but with public goals. It encapsulates the essence of modern public enterprise. In fact, this is what even Woodrow Wilson wanted. So that is what government companies represent. So with this, we come to the end of this 5-question discussion. Because yesterday and the last 2 days, I thought of the writing in the board. But writing in the board took a lot of time. I always had the limitation on delivering what I wanted to say. So I thought of making a PPT for the discussion. I hope that it was more streamlined and more smoother. Okay, so we'll see. Now, let us move on to the orientation for tomorrow. Day 4 orientation. So this constitutes the topics for tomorrow's test: scientific management and scientific management movement, classical theory, and Weber's bureaucratic model, its critics, and post-Weberian developments. So these are the topics of discussion. I will give you, see, remember, even though I wanted to, but there are always limitations on how much I can take in a tested discussion. There are always great limitations on it. And I want to say it once again. I want to register it with you guys. This is not easy. It has taken a considerable efforts. So there are always certain limitations that I face. But I try to give my best, which will help you guys. We'll see how this moves on. We have 50 days, right? We are always amenable to changes. We'll see how we can take it forward. How can we make it more useful? We'll see that. Okay. So, but my general idea, this is not a class, this is a test batch. Remember that. Okay, one moment. One moment. Okay. Okay. So, usually, when one of the easiest part in public administration, an interesting part is reading theories. But before we do that, you need to have a clarity on the need for the theories. Why there is a need for theories or philosophies, not only in public administration, but for any subject. But importantly for PubAd, why these theories are needed? Did you think about it? You should. You should have. So now we'll see why. What is the need of it? Okay. Okay. So when we talk about this need for a theory building, what is the need for a theory abhina? A theory is a systematic way of what? Of a problem. And then finding a solution. So we have a problem which will lead to a solution. Either pandradhudan theory. For example, you take a scientific management theory of Taylor. The problem, inefficiency, lack of science. The solution, scientific management. Remember, any theory you take, they will identify a problem, they will recommend a solution. So, what a theory na? A theory is a systematic way to understand, to predict and manage the complex phenomena encountered in the public sector. Now, what is the use? It is useful in two accounts. One, scholarly research, which means academic uses. Second, practical uses for administrators. So, for researchers in academics and for practices in administrators, it is useful in two things. Even though I wanted to talk about how it is helping in discipline with examples, there are always limitations for that, as I said earlier. But remember, there are great way to understand the administrative thinkers first through this. First try to do this, then you move to reading thinkers. To give an example for that, examples in practice. Remember, examples not in academics, I'm talking examples in practice. For example, performance-based budgeting is one of the common practice followed by many developing and developed nations. And that is actually derived from NPM, New Public Management. And the e-government initiatives or e-governance initiatives. And that is derived from systems theory. So, a theory is always an attempt to understand, predict and manage a problem that is commonly encountered in the public sector. It is helpful for both discipline as well as the practice. Now, this one is also very important. This one is also very important. What is this I'm talking about? See, when you read that administrative theory, don't be too mechanical. Because public administration needs a flexibility in application. I want to remind you once again, compared to any other humanities or social sciences, you have to rely on memory. You read political science or take any psychology, anthropology or sociology, you need to memorize the works of the thinkers strongly. Okay, but public administration, you don't have to remember the works. Okay, if you have an idea of what the work is about, you use the terminologies involved in that theory. Third, in which context that the theory was applied. In the moonu therinja podum, you can use it anywhere and everywhere. This flexibility is not available in any social sciences, guys. This is only with the public administration. Adanala da it's easy to read. But why it is difficult? Because you need to understand that. Only when you understand, you can apply. And only when you apply, your answers will be good. So that is what I'm saying. Read the context and the contextual pressures in and around these administrative theories. What I'm talking about, for example, pre-20th century administration was largely hierarchical. For example, you can take Rome. Okay, so pre 20th century அவங்களோட கான்டெக்ஸ்ட் என்ன? military invasions and the church dominance, and therefore they were always highly hierarchical and centralized. You remember? Can you interconnect? ஸோ ப்ரீ 20th அப்போ பார்த்தீங்கன்னா அப்போ இருந்த ஆர்கனைசேஷன் எல்லாமே சென்ட்ரலைஸ்டாக இருந்தது, ஹைரார்கியை ஃபாலோ பண்ணி இருந்தது. ஏன்னா பிகாஸ் தட் வாஸ் அ டைம் ஆஃப் மிலிட்டரி அண்ட் சர்ச். எக்ஸாம்பிள் Rome military. Second, industrial revolution. When industrial revolution comes, what is the context? Productivity. Because now machines can work faster, humans cannot. அப்ப என்ன பண்ணாங்க? ஹியூமன்ஸையும் வேகமா வேலை செய்ய வைக்கணும். ஸோ ப்ரொடக்டிவிட்டி, எஃபிஷியன்சி, இப்போ இதை கொண்டு வரதுக்கு வந்ததுதான் சயின்டிபிக் மேனேஜ்மெண்ட். ஸோ இண்டஸ்ட்ரியல் ரெவல்யூஷன் இஸ் அ கான்டெக்ஸ்ட் ஃபார் த எமர்ஜென்ஸ் ஆஃப் சயின்டிபிக் மேனேஜ்மெண்ட். அப்போ என்ன பார்க்கணும்னா, அப்போ எங்கெங்கெல்லாம் இது தேவையோ அங்க எல்லாமே இது வரும். The next one, human relations movement. இது எப்போ வந்தது? Human relations movement, it came in 1930s. And what was the major happening during that time? Great Depression. So this was a context, the Great Depression, where the human values are in lowest state in the century. So when the human values are at the lowest stage in the century, அப்போ அதுக்கு வர தியரி என்னவா இருக்கும்? Give human values. அதுதான் human relations movement. So human relations movement என்ன பண்ணாங்கன்னா, remember there is a small shift that will happen here. It give preference to human element in organization. What Elton Meyer done? He has given preference to informal groups. You know how the informal groups helps in shaping the dynamics of organization is the work of Elton Meyer, right? It gives a preference to how individuals interact with each other, the human element, the human relations. It is called as human relations movement. And why? Because this was the context. So what I'm saying here is another thing. Before you read administrative theories and the thinkers, be very familiar, be very strong in the evolution of the public administration. Because only when you understand the evolution of the public administration from the beginning till now, how administration evolves, then understand what happened during that time. For example, when globalization was in reaching the peak, NPM came. When the globalization is slowly fading, governance theory came. You see that? So there is always a context. Adha inga solren, understand this first. So then post World War II, which resulted in the emergence of behavioral science approach, political and legal context, it resulted in the emergence of NPM movement. Okay, so please refer to this more, the context and the contextual pressures. Now coming to the scientific management movement, it will be very difficult to complete theories. If I take a class, scientific management takes at least 2 classes. But as I said, I cannot do that. We'll try to go very slow. Probably what I will do, I'll try to give you an overview about these thinkers. So scientific management, also called as Taylorism, it primarily analyzes and synthesizes the workflow in an industrial flow. And what is the main objective? Economic efficiency, particularly labor productivity. Okay, and what is the speciality about the scientific management theory? It means it applies science to the engineering of process and management. It is also called as scientification of process engineering. And this was spearheaded by this man, Taylor, Frederick Winslow Taylor, F.W. Taylor. So what are the key concepts? See, these key concepts you should be familiar with. The concept of task optimization, what it means, I cannot go through all this. Scientific selection of workers. I'll give you one example. When we talk about scientific selection of workers under the scientific management theory, imagine how UPSC recruits and trains. Whether the recruitment policy and the methodology of UPSC for the civil services, how much it is relevant to Taylorism. Always do this cross-referencing one concept with another. Two things it will help you. One, it will deepen your understanding. Second, it will help in diversifying where to apply. It will be your second nature to apply. So do this always. Always do this. Okay. An example I told you. Scientific selection of workers. Do that. Then management and worker responsibility. Okay. Earlier it was only workers' responsibility, but after scientific management, he talked about management and worker responsibility. And so they are 50-50 responsible for the output. Remember, I'm using the word output, not outcome. Scientific management is output focused. NPM, outcome focused. So performance based pay. Here, another correlation you can make, performance based pay in terms of what motivates humans. So you can connect this to motivation theory. Of Herzberg or McGregor, you can connect to that. Okay, so performance based pay. What is the major motivation according to scientific management theory? Higher pay. So means motivation based on money. But McGregor feels no, it is only a lower level motivation. So compare in this way. So key concepts. Then what are the key principles of scientific management? Maybe you can see this in the video. Pause this video and take a note of these principles. Maybe you can use it later. So replace rule of thumb. No rule of thumb. Harmony, not discord. Yaar yaar fight? Managers and the workers. They say harmony, not discord. Cooperation, not individualism. Maximum output, not restricted output. Development of each person, not the company. Development of each person. Now, if you analyze this, what it says, it's a systematic approach to management and efficiency. One. Second, improved productivity. How? Through standardization and optimization of worker tasks. 3. Importance of compensation. Remember, importance of compensation because performance-based pay. It's importance of compensation linked to performance, which can motivate the workers. So these are the 3 central belief systems of scientific management theory, and how it can be seen as criticism. One of the most important criticism of the scientific management theory is it is dehumanizing. See, in the word use pananum. You have to use these words and the terminologies in your answer. Only then you will get marks. Okay, so dehumanizing, because dehumanizing da Waldo solrar. He particularly uses this word dehumanizing. So you have to use those words. And overly mechanistic. Then the focus on efficiency, criticism. One, dehumanistic. Second, it kills the creativity. Because once you choose a worker for one job, the worker will do the same job every day for 8 to 10 hours throughout his life. He will not do anything else. Because why? He will become specialized in that. So what happens because of this? It has the eroding nature of work life. It kills creativity, autonomy, and also job satisfaction. So the rigid division of responsibilities can lead to discontent and a lack of initiative among the workers. I'm giving you very quick revision. I'm not going through entirety of what this means. Then some important quotes. What Frederick Taylor says, in the past, the man has been first. In the future, system must be first. He says that. Henry Ford, what he says, Taylorism is not the last word in system. Taylorism is not the last word, which means you enna solla varana Taylorism சொல்ற அந்த scientific managementன்றது என்னன்னா is not absoluteன்றார். It is not absolute, but it is necessary foundation. So it is important, not absolute. So I've taken some quote also. You can pause the video and take a note of it if you want. Then what are the key terminologies? Why I have added this? These are the key terminologies which you must be familiar when you come across questions relevant to this area. So scientific management, time study, motion study, work optimization, one best way, task specialization, division of labor, piece rate pay, இந்த மாதிரியான terminologies note பண்ணி வைங்க. For every thinker, for every theory, take down these key terminologies, see them again and again and again, use them in your answers. This is another important way to get good marks. So concluding pointers, two things I will say. Relevance of the scientific management to the present day administration. I'm leaving this open. How much scientific management? Because scientific management which came in the early 20th century. Late 20th, I'm sorry for this, late 20th century. Early 20th century. I first correct that. So the scientific movement which came in the early 1920s, the early 20th century, how much it is relevant even now, even after 100 years? Is it relevant? Of course it is relevant. How much? One. Second, modern concepts that are borrowed from the movement. What are the other concepts that are borrowed? In any other concept that can be linked to scientific management? You must be aware of that. Then the next topic in our syllabus is classical theories in public administration. What is a classical theory? Why we call it as a classical? Because கிளாசிக்கல்னாலே முதல்ல ஒரு விஷயத்தை யாராவது ஒன்று எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ணி சொல்றாங்கன்னா அது கிளாசிக்கல். ஸோ கிளாசிக்கல் மீன்ஸ் த ஃபர்ஸ்ட் காம்ப்ரிஹென்சிவ் அட்டெம்ப்ட் டு apply systematic and scientific reasoning to management and administration of organizations. Even the Kaudulya is not considered to be systematic. Okay, even the Machiavelli and his work, The Prince, is not systematic. Who has given that systematic formulation of how organizations to be run? That is called as classical thinkers, and that is called as classical theories. So classical theories la yaar varuvanga? Scientific management theory. And what are the key next one, administrative management theory by Henry Fayol. Henry Fayol nale mukyamana vishayam enna? The 14 principles of management. His important work is 14 principles of management. The one difference is scientific management theory, Taylorism, is more suited for low level management. But the other two classical theories, given administrative management, scientific management by Taylor, administrative management by Fayol, and the bureaucratic theory by Max Weber, these are most ideal for higher level management functions. For lower level management functions, scientific management is more suitable. Higher level functions, administrative management as well as bureaucracy, theory of bureaucracy is more suitable. So the next one is bureaucratic theory. Also you have to include Luther, Gulick and Urwick, the two other theories, because they are known for post-Gorb. They are very well known for what is called as post-Gorb. And also Mary Parker Follett is considered to be a bridge between classical and modern theories and administration. So therefore, we can include her also into classical theories. Her ideas are very important on the subjects of conflict resolution, her theories on leadership, her theories on authority, control. So her work is very expansive and very intuitive. We don't have the time. Then why are they called pioneering theories? So I'm moving. Please pause the video and go through this. What are the criticisms also? So what are the common criticisms? One, the classical theories lacks human elements. Okay, they usually make the humans dehumanized. That's the first major theory. Second, they are usually prescriptive. Okay, prescriptive, as if one size fit all approach, but what they suggest for one kind of a sector may not be applicable for another company or another sector. For example, scientific management is ideal for industries, but scientific management is not ideal for universities. It is not ideal for public sector. So, but when they prescribe as if it is applicable for everywhere. That is wrong. So one size fit all approach is another problem. The next, usually classical theories represent an organizational structure which is resistant. Because remember, இவங்க சொல்றது எல்லாமே எப்படி தெரியுமா, நாட்டாம அப்படின்ற மாதிரி, they always say as a principles of management, principles which cannot be violated. If a principle which cannot be violated, how they can respond? Therefore they will be resistant to change. So the three major criticisms. Then we have the hero of usually the subject, Max Weber. Max Weber is propounded his model of bureaucracy in a book called as Economy and Society. Remember, always also, whenever you write answers, whenever you talk about an author, a thinker, also try to write what was the book or what was the article in which that work was published. It's also very important. And important thing is Max Weber's typology of authority. He has differentiated authority into three types: traditional, charismatic, and legal rational authority. And bureaucratic model, what are the key features? Hierarchy, specialization, rules and regulations, impersonality, merit-based advancement, formal written communications. And what are the critics? As we discussed earlier, rigidity, inefficiency and waste, dehumanization, over specialization, and resistance to change. These are the criticisms. And here I'm giving it more like an opportunity for you to understand more, because questions are coming from these dimensions also. So Max Weber's relationship to Marx and Marxism in relation to public administration. Weber's criticism of Marxism in relation to public administration, which means how they identify authority in organizations. What is the view of authority by Marx and the Weber, and how the Weber criticizes? சார் நான் என்ன சார் பண்றது? ஒன்றும் இல்லை, கூகுள் சர்ச் போட்டு பாருங்க, அவ்வளோதான். வெரி சிம்பிள். முதல் ரெண்டு சர்ச்சில் என்ன பாயிண்ட் வருதோ, 2-3 பாயிண்ட், வாட் மார்க்ஸ் ஹவ் செட், வாட் வெபர் ஹவ் செட், தட்ஸ் எனஃப். You don't have to become a researcher or a scholar for this. Second, Weber's alternative views on capitalism and Weber's solution to the problems of industrial society. So these are also some extra reading you can do to enhance and deepen your understanding. And emerging concepts. When I say emerging concepts, these two are the emerging concepts that I will say that it's good enough to have familiarity with. The concept of debureaucratization, which means delinking hierarchies. Representative bureaucracy, another important concept that is taking rounds in the recent times. And also I've included some comments of important thinkers. Robert K. Merton, he says, dysfunctions of bureaucracy. He called it as dysfunctions of bureaucracy. அது அவர் என்னன்னு சொல்றாருன்னா, called as goal displacement. Bureaucracy goal மறந்துட்டாங்களாம். அவங்களோட goal public delivery. But actually what they tend to do, they tend to follow the rules. So they forgot the goals. It's called as displacement of the goals. Peter Blau, he studied informal organization within bureaucracies. Remember, when we say informal organization within bureaucracies, we cannot avoid Elton Mayo. Third, Mitchell Crozier. He is responsible for bureaucratic phenomenon in the context of power and organizational dynamics. In fact, நிறைய இருக்கு. இது என்ன தெரியுமா? இது நீங்க நினைக்கலாம், சார் அப்ப இது எல்லாத்தையும் நான் படிச்சிருக்கணுமா? Do you have to read Robert K. Merton, Peter Blau, Michael Crozier? No, I'm not saying that. I'm including this to bring this to your awareness, even though you don't know Robert K. Merton. Okay, let's say your question comes. The concept of goal displacement by the bureaucratic functions explained by Robert K. Merton is relevant. for the bureaucracy in India. இது தெரிஞ்சாலே போதும். ஓ பியூரோக்ரஸினா கோலை டிஸ்பிளேஸ் பண்ணுறாங்க இல்லையா, அப்போ உங்களோட மேக்ஸ் பேப்பரோட ஐடியா வச்சு இந்த ஆன்சரை எழுத முடியும். You don't need to know what Robert K. Merton have said. Even it is true for everything. So, but only thing is a specific concept, goal displacement, used by a specific author, Robert K. Merton. So this is what I call it as a flexibility which is given by the public administration, which you cannot find in any other humanities. So you can do this. Don't get stressed. Sir, I don't know all that. Don't worry. You can still answer provided you have a grip on your basic thinkers. Prasad and Prasadala, whatever the thinkers have been given, if you have a grip on it, all these guys are easy to handle. Then post-Weberian developments. When we say post-Weberian developments, what are we talking about? Bureaucracy is for dehumanization. Post-Weberian means humanization. Remember that. Humanization, democratization, multiple actor approaches, or value-laden or welfare-oriented approaches. These are the important concepts in welfare approach. And what are the uniqueness about the post-Weberian approach? From hierarchy to network, from rules to values, from efficiency to effectiveness. These are the three things that post-Weberian theories, post-Weberian concepts aims to accomplish. And what are the important post-Weberian theories? NPM, governance and network theory, public value management, Moore. You remember Moore? Digital era governance. Yes, digital era governance. These are the important post-Weberian concepts. So with this, we come to the discussion and the orientation for day 3. Hope you guys are writing. I doubtful whether you guys are seeing first of all, but if you're seeing, I hope that you see it continuously. Slowly, you guys will take up the practice of writing. And if you are writing, you can send it to my Telegram ID. I'll be pleased to go through the answers that you write. Or if you have any problems, you need any help or mentoring, I'm always here to help you. Thank you guys. See you tomorrow and have a great day.